Ross Feingold. Ross, thanks so much indeed for joining us. Look, we know, everybody does, that the White House will be well aware of how politically controversial sending such a senior official to Taiwan is. So why do it right now?
Well, it's just the latest in a series of steps that the Trump administration has taken to put U.S.-Taiwan relations on a more normal footing. That includes arms sales and government-to-government interaction, whether it occurs here in Taipei or in the United States. Up to now, it has not included visits by U.S. officials at this level of seniority, but even within the past 3 years, there's been a series of visits by senior government officials, again, not necessarily at this level of seniority. And it shows that the U.S. is not going to have its Taiwan policy dictated to it by China. On the other hand, when the U.S. meets with China, notwithstanding that the U.S. will say, China, you don't get to dictate our policy towards Taiwan, the U.S. will still insist that it hasn't changed the commitments it's made with China as far as not having diplomatic relations with Taiwan.
Okay. It would be understandable in that respect, the way you frame it, in terms of the continuing improvement of relations between Washington and Taiwan. But it certainly ups the ante in terms of what's been happening over the past few months. It really does seem as if not a day goes by without Washington having some sort of pop, whether it's a diplomatic statement, whether it's some kind of policy statement, that something is happening almost every day in terms of Washington seeking some sort of confrontation or resetting its own relationship with Beijing. So to send Alex Azar there at this time, it becomes so much more than just a continuation of what you're talking about, surely.
Well, the U.S. Likes to call it the whole-of-government approach to China issues, whether it's trade issues, human rights, religious freedom, South China Sea, Hong Kong, or Taiwan. It turns out that this year there has been the pandemic, so it makes it appropriate to send an official with a health portfolio to Taiwan to discuss cooperation. And frankly, the United States and Taiwan this year have already announced several initiatives, such as for vaccine research. So again, yeah, it will certainly annoy China to no end. But on the other hand, it's just part of the overall context, whether that's U.S.-Taiwan bilateral relations improvement or the worsening of U.S.-China relations, which unfortunately for Taiwan, some may question whether or not Taiwan is just becoming one among the agenda items. And that's not necessarily to Taiwan's benefit either.
Ross, as an American citizen speaking to us from Taipei, a country as a whole, Taiwan having fewer than 500 coronavirus infections, about 7 people having died. Obviously, we know what's happening in the United States, the worst hit country in terms of infections and the number of dead. When you look back at your home nation and what's happening there compared to what's happening in the country you currently live in, what do you think about that? I mean, do you look at it as a complete disaster? Do you look at it as some kind of failure of government, or just something that's happened because the country is so huge and can't control the disease?
Well, those are all very fair questions, but I think it's also fair to say that every country around the world, whether it's in East Asia, South Asia, Europe, or North America, or South America, they have different healthcare systems. Here in Taiwan, they have a national healthcare system, which we obviously don't have in the United States. The healthcare system retains an enormous amount of data and a very easy ability to do things like contact tracing. And it was very easy for Taiwan to go into a relative self-imposed bubble in January to really quickly restrict entrance, not just initially from people from China, but then from the rest of the world as well. And look, the United States being the global commercial and cultural engine, it's not so easy to go into a complete lockdown of people coming in and out of the United States, although eventually they tried to do that. So Taiwan had some very unique advantages going into this situation, which they could share with the world, but they're not necessarily things that other countries can emulate either.
Ross, always appreciate your appearance on TRT World and your analysis. Take care. Ross Feingold.